Cedric Maxwell podcast
is brought to you by Prizepicks.
Guys, I have a special treat. One of my gym buddies I met down here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Gerald Carr, right? This is how it goes. And you can tell my listeners about your experience. I know 4 years with the Eagles you had with them, and 28 years collegiate, and USFL. Did you say that also?
Yes, the United Football League with Marty Schottenheimer.
Oh, okay.
Well, first, before I start talking about myself, I got to tell everybody, hey, man, I grew up watching Ced do his thing down at UNC Charlotte. He helped put UNC Charlotte on the map. And I was sitting there the day that Marquette cheated him out of the chance to go to the final game. So it was such a pleasure to see him in real life and get a chance to dialogue with him about that experience. So that's my claim to fame with Ced Maxwell. And so I'm glad that we were able to come together this way.
That is so cool. You know, guys, well, we met actually in the gym. I'm in the process right now of losing a little weight. And Gerald is also, he's working out. He says, what's this thing you said? A Big Mac away from a how did that go? You said?
I said the price you have to pay just to eat a Big Mac.
All right, now, I want you to tell us a little bit about the state of, because we're in New England right now, and a lot of people all over, but tell us a little bit about what you thought about what's going on with the New England Patriots, the way they're playing and how things are going with them.
Ced, the thing that you got to be cautious of, and this is what happens when you've had such success like they've had in New England, where Super Bowls was the expectation every time. And then when you lose a what you call not just a Hall of Fame, but probably one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and trying to replace him. So you're sitting there hoping that it's just going to rinse and repeat. But I think the thing that they need to look at is that they're on the right track. I really, really like Drake May. I liked him when he was in college. I like him even in the NFL. The one thing with him, as you can see, is that he has flashes of doing great things. And we're just looking for the consistency that comes along with it. So let's not scam over the fact that he's still a young player. He's not a second-year player because he only played a few ball games in there. And then now you got a brand new staff. And now you got to get acclimated to the way that Josh McDaniels is going to call plays, and you got to get used to the culture that Mike Vrabel is putting forward. And they face a really good football team, I would say, in the Raiders. Now the Raiders have not been great because you're in the conference with Kansas City and Denver and those guys, so the record doesn't always show. Yes, we can say that they had a brand new staff, but Pete Carroll is a veteran at what he does. But what they did is that they did not lose a lot of their players. They still had the Max Crosbys of the world, and they still had the veterans. Whereas you look at the Patriots, I think they spent $300 million or $30 million in free agency. And, they had a lot of rookies. So it's a brand new football team. But they showed some signs of being.
Kraft looked like he went in his pocket and got some money. Spitting incident, which we saw, was just the most disgusting things I think I've seen in a long time. There are rules in all sports, but that's just one you don't break, is it?
No, you do not. That's not only is that a sports rule, that's a man rule. That's a life rule. You don't spit on someone and do that and expect nothing to happen. He got off light off of that one, to be very honest with you. I see where the NFL just said that they're not going to suspend him for another game. They said that with him being ejected served as his suspension. But I thought they would be justified in making him sit another game because, everybody's watching. And not only that, young kids are watching and college kids are watching. And so people emulate what they see most of the time on TV. As I can't remember which college game it was where I think one of the linemen cost his team a game because he spit on someone in a college game. So we just don't do that.
I find sports to be really, kind of, it goes back and forth, but then again, there's a lot of differences. When you coach with the Eagles, what was the biggest thing you saw between now and then?
One, the advancement of the athlete. From now to then, back then we had great players, but now with all the technology and all the training and everything that you see with all the young players, and it's very evident because when you look at the NFL right now, you can look at the emergence of the quarterback position, how well those guys are coming in playing as rookies because, you've had 707 camps. You have passing leagues now. You're able to bring the athlete in and spend more time with them in the off season. We had to try to put together in our passing camps or whatever to try to get things going. And so that's been the biggest change that I can see is just the advancement of the athlete and advancement of the big lineman. I mean, you look at some of the guys, just take Micah Parsons, for instance, and see how fast he runs. And that game has changed immensely in that sense. Mistake,
Jerry Jones getting rid of Parsons?
I would say it was. You just don't, of course, you don't know. What's the old saying? You never look at another man's checkbook because you never know what he's doing and what he has and whatever his plan is. If you look at the two games, as you're doing a comparison where Micah Parsons was a part of both of the football teams, I think the Dallas Cowboys could have won that football game against the Eagles because all they needed a couple times was someone to get Jalen Hurts on the ground. I mean, they had some pressure on him, but they just couldn't get him on the ground where Micah Parsons would have been able to do that. And as you saw in the Green Bay Detroit game where he had an impact, not only did he have a sack, but his hurries of the quarterback. And there's a thing that, we always say, and, and my whole deal in coaching quarterbacks and talking with the offensive lineman or whatever, the two things that you don't want to happen to your quarterback is flash and feet. And what I mean by that, what I mean by that is that if he gets a flash in his face, he can't see, so it speeds him up. And now you get him off his spot, so now his feet speed up and everything starts to speed up, and it takes the quarterback out of his rhythm. And Micah Parsons does a great job of being able to get the quarterback out of his rhythm.
Give me a couple of players that you were just so impressed with when you were with the Eagles professionally, or when you were in another league. Who were you most impressed with?
Okay, I got to give you a quick story. In my very, very first year that I was in the NFL, and we were making a playoff run, and we lost our number one receiver, Fred Barnett, had gotten hurt, and we're making a playoff run, and we were sitting in a meeting, and as we sit in the meetings, our director of pro personnel comes down and he tells Coach Rose, Ray Rose, who was our head coach at the time, he said, "Hey Ray, I got a gentleman that can come in and play. I know that the New York Jets are getting ready to release him, and I think he will be able to fill the spot for us in order to do that." And so as we're sitting there, and I'm saying, New York Jets, who are they getting ready to release? Who are they getting ready to cut? What they getting ready to do? And then all of a sudden, Ray said, "Well, yeah, that'd be a good idea to do that." And then they said, "Hey, get Art's agent on the phone." And I'm like, "Art? Who are they talking about?" Well, they're talking about Art Monk. So Ray comes in and he said, "Gerald, we're going to bring Art Monk in for a workout." And so when we do that, I'm sitting there now. Here I am, a rookie wide receiver coach in the NFL. Art Monk, he could have gone to the Hall of Fame anytime he decided to quit playing. And so I'm sitting there, and so that Tuesday morning as I walk in, there's the itinerary sitting on my desk for him to come in for his workout. So it has, physical, workout, yada, yada, yada. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh man, physical. Maybe they cut me because he can't, make the team or whatever because he's hurt or whatever. So sure enough, he has his physical. I go over to our trainer and I said to him, I said, "Hey, James," I said, "did Art pass his physical?" He said, "Yes, he passed his physical." He said, "Now it's up to you, big boy. Don't mess it up." I said, "Oh Lord." So I'm walking in and as I go to get ready to get dressed, I'm sitting there to see Art Monk land on the floor. He's there stretching. So I go into the locker room, my locker. and I'm getting ready to get dressed. I said, you know what? I need to address this right away. So I go in and I sit down and I go by and I see Art and he's laying on the floor. And I said, hello, Art, how you doing? Gerald Carr. He said, hey, Gerald, how you doing? I said, you ready for this? He said, about as good as I can be. I said, well, Art, let's get first things out of the way. First things first. I said, can I have your autograph? I said, I've been watching you ever since I was a Redskin fan. And I said, can I have your autograph? And he started laughing. So we broke the ice with that. So we end up going out on the field. And as we're going out on the field and working with him, I often did a lot of things trying to see how guys got off bump and run. So I'm sitting there and I was able to keep Art from getting off the line of scrimmage. I'm like, wait a minute, this is Art Monk. So I changed his stance. I botched his stance and changed his stance, and he got off the line like lightning quick. And he looked at me. He says, "You know what? No one has ever told me that." And I'm like, "Yes." I mean, now we're good. But to say that he was.
Well, what did you change? What did you change when you talk about his stance? It 1 foot back, or is it? But because we're all laymen here, I want you to.
So his stance, as you see,
the great Art Monk.
As you see a receiver, his stance is an elongated stance where, your feet, 1 foot is up and one is back, as you'll see a receiver. And so if he's trying to get off the line of scrimmage and bump and run, now he's still got to bring this foot forward, where now that gives the defensive back enough reaction time to get to him and get his hands into his body. Well, instead of doing that, now what I did was I made him botch his stance, the side by side in a sense, so that now he can come either left or right and move his feet and get there. So now it's kind of like equalizing. So it's almost like fighting. It's almost like boxing. If I'm sitting there and I'm boxing you and your hands are up, my hands better not be down, because by the time you punch, I can't get my hands up fast enough. So I have to emulate exactly what that person is doing. So defensive back, when he's in bump and run, his feet are just like this. And he's sitting there ready to punch you. So if my feet are sitting back there and his feet are right there, who's got the advantage? He has the advantage. So now I have to get parallel so that I can mirror with what he has.
Wow, that is. I mean, to teach your old dog new tricks, that seems a little. Did that surprise you? And did it surprise you that he took to what you said?
It didn't surprise me that he took to it. It surprised me that he had gone this long in the league and no one ever changed it for him. Because when he said that no one ever told him that, it made me feel good. Like yes, maybe I do belong. And so,
well, Randy Moss, I always saw him. He had different stances. I mean, sometimes he had the leg back, sometimes he had the 2 feet forward.
Yes.
How did? Because he's one of the greats that we've seen. How did he do it so easily, or did he just know?
Well, it goes to the progression of the game, where sometimes it works in the past, and then as we continue to go forward, now it's just like this in football. You see people go for it on fourth down a lot now. Back then, no one went for it on fourth down, so they say analytics, so they brought analytics into the game. You sit there like Aaron Rodgers when he did the back shoulder fade, where a receiver would be running down the field and he'll throw the ball to the back shoulder of the receiver because he knew it couldn't get past. That came into the game. So it's so many things in the evolution as they learn and as they continue to go forward. So that's where that probably got lost in the manner. And you got a guy like Art Monk who has done so well this whole time. Back in the day, people would very seldom try to bump and run him because they knew that they couldn't stop him. And but to say that when you asked me about the gist of the first question, not only was he a great football player, he's a great person. And just to see the humbleness that this gentleman had and his caring for his teammates and everybody else, and how he came in and helped mentor some of the young guys, it was even more so refreshing to see that. And then
I saw all these things you said with the progression of people, and one of the nicest guys I remember ever being around was the Secretary of Defense, and he just taught me when I was around him, Reggie White. It was just like almost like God going to church. He was, and one of the things he told me, I said, Reggie, why why the NFL players try to hold on past their prime? Now, I remember him looking at me saying, Corn, let me tell you why. He said, you are a basketball player. He said, if you want to, after you retire, you can go out and play some more basketball, hoop around. When you finish professional football, tackling people, you are never going to go back. So that deal is done. So you try to stretch it out as long as you can. And I thought that was kind of pretty insightful when you were talking about players.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Cohen, is that when you look at it, and I think sometimes even more so, and you can understand this as an athlete and being a part of a team sport, it's not even as much sometimes as the game and the preparation. It's the locker room. It's the camaraderie. Because once you walk out of that locker room, you don't have the same people as looking at the same dynamics that you're looking at. So you get up every morning and go back and think about this. You start playing football at 8 years old, all the way up until you right around the mid-30s or whatever. I mean, that's been your life. That's been your structure the whole time. So it's so hard to give that up.
You told me a story which was funny. You don't seem to be an intimidated type guy. When you came up and talked to me, you seemed like you're very, up, with people and knowing people. You told me a story about when you walked into the Philadelphia Eagles locker room during the playoffs, and you said, "Holy shit!" It was like a whole. You said it was you said it was like intimidating. How so?
Well, there's three levels. There's three levels to the season in the NFL. You got the preseason, where we've just gone through the preseason, and you see where the guys are not playing. Of course, they don't make and I don't know how it is in the NBA, but they do not make their game. They do not make the actual salary because they got preseason money that they get for training camp. Well, then you get to the season, and now when you're in the season, you're jockeying trying to win that world championship. You want to be the top dog because you only playing that game to win that ring. Well, then when you go into the playoffs, it's one and done. It's like there's no tomorrow. You don't have another chance to try to come back and get that ring. Not only that, who's to say that the following year that you're going to get there? Who's to say that you're not going to be replaced the following year? And what's so ironic, what people don't realize is that the players play for less money during the playoffs than they do during the season because their game checks stop at the 16th week of the 17th week of the football season with the last game. So now it's all about playoff, and they getting paid less money, but it's all about that championship. And so when I walked into that locker room, that's my very first year, and I walked there and I could feel the intensity. I could feel the heat. I walked in and I like, oh shit, I backed up and I had to catch my breath a little bit because I said, wow, I had never seen anything like it because the game gets faster. I mean, it's just more intense. I mean, it's like, we're not going to, it's almost like if you're sitting there and you're a hungry man and there's one piece of bread in the center of that room and there's 3 or 4 people going after that bread, you're going to go get that bread.
Prizepicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less and at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prizepicks. Prizepicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prizepicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game.
So I love that analogy when you talk about, being a coach and then seeing players and the dynamics and really. And I was a huge football player, football fan at one time. But the game has changed so much. And to understand about head injuries and understand about concussions and all the things. But the game has got a lot softer than it was during the time that I used to watch it, when they had those guys like Dick Butkus and Alan Page and I mean, I'm talking about old school guys who, were just ruthless. I know the game had to change, but I guess it's changed for the better, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's to protect the innocent, because as a football player, think about this, Ed. Just think about this. And first of all, like the playoffs, every game is game 7 when you're in the playoffs in football. See, you guys, basketball, you have all the way up until game 7. And game 7, you've been there. You know what a game 7 is like. So think about this as a football player. What man in his right mind is going to think that he can run his body into another man's body and not get hurt?
I talked to a Teddy Bruschi, and a couple of guys who were Patriot guys.
Yeah, we had Teddy at Arizona when I was there.
And we were talking about it was Ted. Forgetting his name now, but he talked about that played with the Patriots. They talked about the number of concussions that he had. And I was like, what? He said, I said, how many concussions do you think you had? He said, man, I've had at least 3 or 4 concussions in a game. Not during the season. He said, for my career, he said, I probably had about maybe 100 concussions. I was like, oh my God, that just seemed brutal when you think about how the game was played and where it is now.
And the thing is that the game has changed for the better, because as you may see, there are some guys that still have the ill effects of being in the sport. I mean, fingers are dislocated, knees are hurting, backs are, it's just so much.
Earl Campbell is one of the worst ones I've seen personally.
Yeah, Earl's been in a wheelchair.
I remember Earl playing in Houston. And just, when they had the tearaway jerseys, and I don't know how many jerseys the man went through. It must have been, 20 jerseys in the game. But his jersey would be threads. But what I'm talking about is I've seen Earl now, and I see him sometimes at the Houston Rocket games. And literally, they're bringing this man in on a wheelchair, and it's just so sad to see of what he did to his body. And I guess that's the crazy thing about running backs and power running backs, that they just try to run through you. And I guess that's why they don't last as long. Ezra and James, another guy I remember, it seems like they're those guys who run the ball are there today and they're gone tomorrow, because I guess the violent nature of the game.
Yeah, the body only has so many hits in it. And again, like I said, you never go out on the field thinking that you're going to get hurt. You never think that something's going to happen to you. So you play the game with a passion. You play the game with a, for lack of a better term, a controlled violence. That I had spoken to a chiropractor that will come in on Fridays to do some what we call adjusting of the bodies for some of our players. So I got on the table one time. I say, it's chiropractor here. Let me go get on the table myself and see. And so he was doing a manipulation on myself. And I told him, I said, wow, man. I said, how many guys do you have? He said, Gerald, I've had about 10, 15 guys come in. He said, let me say this to you, that when those guys run their bodies into each other, it's like a full speed car accident. And he said, can you imagine what a car accident is like, coming head on at the speed that they're coming? So you can just know that their body is going to get pushed out of whack. And I said, yeah. He said, that doesn't just happen one time. That happens all the time. And, when you look at it, people think that the wide receivers are the ones that's getting the concussions. They don't get as much as the head injuries as the offensive and defensive linemen. Because when you watch those guys, they're like rams. They're clashing each other every time. And that's 300 pounds coming at each other in a short space. So the game is not an easy game. It's not a game for the timid and the soft-hearted. It's a game for those that. That's why not many people are able to do it. That's why it has not been replicated in. And not knocking basketball or any other sport, but there's not many other countries or whatever that can replicate playing that sport. Women, they can play flag football, but you're not going to see them put on uniforms and do that type of thing because
let me ask you this. Let me challenge you then. How about rugby?
See, rugby has some different rules, though. See, it's funny. I was over in South Africa, and while I was there, I was talking to some people that were rugby players, and they were like, "Oh, you guys are soft. You got pads on. You got this and that." I like, hold on, time out. I mean, we started playing football, playing Sandlock football. We started without pads and everything on. But the same thing is that you cannot have full speed contact like they have in rugby, like in the NFL. It's in a controlled space, and the ball is lateral backwards. So now, they move sideways, they lateral, and everybody's in one plane. Well, in the game of football, you can throw it forward, you can pass it backwards. You're all on different levels, and you got full speed contact coming at you in a different way. So just take a running back that is running down the sideline and a free safety that's coming at full speed. Now that contact is a lot more of an impact, and you do not have that in rugby. And as you see, when they do the scrum, their scrum looks like it looks like the tush push, as they call it right now. And so when the ball is pushed backwards, is on the ground. It's not like they coming forward to get it. Once they get it, then they start laterally the ball back. So it's a little different in the contact areas because they get a foul if they hit a guy above the waist or in different areas.
Well, that and maybe I love to jump around, but you just spoke about the tush push. I just think that it just seems like that somebody's going to get killed that way. If you got one man holding you up and another man pushing you forward, man, how has the guy not got hurt? I know it's a small space, but you get these guys who weigh 350, 360 for whatever they weigh, and the guy pushing you from behind and the guy that just seems dangerous.
Well, I think it's more dangerous for the lineman than it is for the back, so the guy that's carrying the ball, because that lineman is, as we talk about football, we talk about leverage. You've got to get your pads. You got to snap the ball and get your pads up underneath the defensive lineman pads, and now you're pushing him and they pushing you. Then all of a sudden, everybody's falling on top of you. It's not like that. It's not like that they push and they stop. Everybody's falling on top of you, so you're underneath that pile, taking the grunt of that field.
As a coach, what was the most frustrating thing that ever happened to you in college, pros, or whatever it is? What's the most frustrating thing?
The most frustrating thing, to be very honest with you, is to have a young man or an athlete that has full potential and he cannot put himself in the position to maximize it. When you're given every opportunity to do so. Why is it frustrating? Or why can you not do it?
Why does it happen? Why does it happen? I understand it's frustrating because we look at the talent that guys have, and then you said that they don't utilize it, or they're somewhat the word lazy comes in. They don't work hard enough. But how does that just happen with so many? Because I always talk about athletes. You can see some of the greatest players in the world who potentially you're saying, man, that guy can't miss, and then gets in the league, and you're going, well, he missed, and he missed again.
Yeah, and that was the same thing, as you've been in a locker room with guys that had immense talent and just couldn't get to that point. There, and I think the thing that's frustrating as a coach is that by nature we are fixers. We are, we got to fix the problem. We got to get you to that point. We got to get you to realize where you are. We got to try every tactic that we can to motivate you, to educate you, to stimulate you, to get you to that point. And I think the hardest part is that we don't know what that external factor is. Is it that he's not studying the game? Is it that he's not taking it seriously? Is it that he's in the streets, doing whatever or however? And so when you cannot put your finger on that external force, it just frustrates the heck out of you because you're putting in everything, wanting it for them more than they I shouldn't say want it more than what they want for themselves, because I'm sure they want it for themselves, but they haven't identified what it is that they can get to. And if money is
I'm going to put you. I'm going to put you on the spot and tell me your top 10 coaches ever to coach in professional football.
Top 10 in the ever to coach in football. They may not
Ever
be.
This is your list. This is your list, so it don't matter.
It may not be in the correct order. Okay, so
we don't talk about the order. I just want to know.
So let's go in I would say chronological order. So starting all the way with Vince Lombardi. Vince proved that he could take a team and win. And then we come down to a guy like Tom Landry with the Dallas Cowboys, who made Dallas Cowboys who they are. Then you get a guy like Bud Grant, who had the Minnesota Vikings, and no one knew about the Vikings and how good they were. And Purple People Eaters. Then you come to a person like Chuck Knowles with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who became a dynasty within themselves and them winning. And then you get to Marv Levy at the Buffalo Bills.
Never won, though. Never won.
But you went 4 straight years you go to the Super Bowl. 4 straight years that you go to the Super Bowl. That is not easy to do. I don't care who it is, how it is, whatever. And to have them buy in every year to do that. And then I come to Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh helped transcend the game of football in a sense. And not only did he transcend it, you can talk about how good of a leader or a coach or organization it is when you can look at the branches that people that have branched off from you and taken the game and continue to have the same success that you've had, because they learn it from you within that time frame. So I give him a shout out. Now I'll tell you a guy that never won the big one, but won all over, and I had the opportunity to coach with him in the UFL, was Marty Schottenheimer. Everywhere Marty went, Marty won. I mean, he won at Kansas City, he won at San Diego, he won. And so he won with the Cleveland Browns. He had the Cleveland Browns on the doorstep 2 years in a row to go to the Super Bowl. And, you know, you have the fumble by Ernest Biner, and you have the drive by Denver Broncos. And so that's where Marty comes into play. I have to give Andy Reid his flowers. Andy replaced us. Andy replaced us when we left Philadelphia. And he did a great job at Philly. Did not win the big one, but he got there. And then when he came to Kansas City, and the great sign of a great coach is someone that's willing to check themselves, to say, hey, you know what? I'm not always the right answer, but I'm going to find out who's the right answer. I'm not always going to do about who's right, but what's right. And he was able to do that when he went from Philadelphia and then came to Kansas City and figured out what it is he needed to do, and had to make a hard, fast decision to take a guy like Alex Smith and send him off to take a young guy in Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you just went to the playoffs with this guy. You say, hey, you know what? We got to be able to do this. And so he hits that list. People are gonna think I'm crazy when I say this name is Pete Carroll, because Pete had a stint. And people in New England hate Pete Carroll because he didn't do well there. And then, I mean, he was with the Jets. He didn't do well there. But when he left the Jets and went to college and figured it out at USC and figured out how to get it all to gel together. And then he went to Seattle, and he did the exact same thing that Andy Reid did, in a sense, where they had just paid Matt Flynn, I want to say $7 million in free agency as the starting quarterback. And maybe $9 million. I might be off a couple million. We won't sneeze at it. I'm sure the owner said, don't make it different. But they took a third-round quarterback in Russell Wilson and started him at the quarterback position after they had just paid all his money to a free agent. And so they made a mistake. They admitted that they made a mistake. And once they decided to correct that mistake, then things just took off because the football team went to 3 Super Bowls, I think it was. And so, so that's the sign of a good coach to say, hey, you know what? I don't always have all the right answers. I give myself the opportunity to be wrong. And so what was that? That's like 7 or 8. I'm trying to think of 2 more.
You're amazing to me because you haven't named the one that everybody would think would be an obvious one. You didn't say anything about Belichick yet.
No, I'll get to Belichick. I'll get to him, but you got to go back and you got to look, and so and that's where I was saying it was in chronological order, not just by order of. So Belichick came after who was my last one? Pete Carroll, when Pete started, and so then you got 2 more. One being Don Shula.
Okay.
One with the Baltimore Colts and one with the Miami Dolphins, and did a fantastic job. Who has the record that now that Bill Belichick is chasing, and Belichick did a great job with creating a culture. He had a culture in New England. Now there were 2 guys that's dear to my heart in a sense that was part of New England, that was part of those transformations of whatever. One being Teddy Bruschi. Teddy, we recruited Teddy at the University of Arizona when I was there. And when Teddy came in, we all looked at we don't know if he can be a linebacker, don't know if he could be a defensive end. He's a tweener. And as God is my witness, we're sitting around the table, and our head football coach at the time was Dick Tomey, God rest his soul, looked at us and he says, how many of you guys will say that we're going to take Teddy Bruschi, that we should sign him to a scholarship? And in that room was myself, Pat Hill, 2, 4, 5, 6 guys that ended up coaching in the NFL, sitting around that table. And none of us said that we would take Teddy Bruschi over another kid that we were recruiting. The head football coach looked at us. He said, you know what? There's something about him. There's something about his motor. There's something I like. He said, I'm making a head coaching decision. We're going to take him. And sure enough, took him. He became the Pac-10, became the sack leader and the whole thing. And then, of course, went on to New England and did well. Well, the other guy that was really dear to my heart, and I was at Washington State at the time, and we had this young man that was going to be our quarterback, and we was recruiting him. We gave him his own special recruiting day, and his very first game that he played as a freshman after we had the leading passer in the country, and we set him on the bench to put in Drew Bledsoe. Drew threw 3 touchdown passes his freshman year and went on to have a great career at Washington State, came over to New England, and as fate would have it, Drew gets hurt, and then Tom Brady comes in, he takes over, and they go from that point. So that's my story with my connection to New England. And the 2 guys.
You know what? Let me tell you, another guy you didn't name, it's really chronological order, and I'm give you that. Joe Gibbs wasn't in there.
I forgot about Joe. I forgot about Joe. That's a good one. Who do I take out? Wow. Joe not only.
And you're not, watch this. And you're not gonna have the big tuna in there.
Who's that?
The big tuna. Big tuna. You know who the big tuna is. He coached in New England. He went. Yeah. He said, "I got all the groceries." Parcell. He's not in there.
Who do you take out? I mean, do you take out? I
don't know. I'm just asking the question because there's a show. There's a video called Madden, which comes out all the time that people talk about. I'm just saying. I'm testing where you're at. I hear what you're saying, but I'm just saying Parcell wasn't in there. Joe Gibbs wasn't in there, and
John Madden.
and Madden, who everybody knows Madden. Madden, Madden he's turned football. He's turned sports.
If I had
into something we don't even know.
So if I had to take somebody out, wow, that's going to be hard because people say, well, you take Pete Carroll out, but Pete won two Super Bowls, national championship. He's at 73 years old and still coaching.
Yeah.
So it's hard to take him out. Marv Levy didn't win the Super Bowl, but he went 4 straight years and had a heck of a team. So you probably could substitute Marv Levy take the big tuna for Marv Levy since they beat him in the Super Bowl. Of course, it was a missed kick that did it, wide right. Joe Gibbs, like you said, man, wow. Joe Gibbs, and not only has Joe done it on the NFL level, but he helped change NASCAR. I mean, he brought that same concept that he had coaching football to NASCAR, and has won numerous championships with Joe Gibbs Racing, and again has branched off and sent people on to do that. So that's a good call. That's a good call on that standpoint.
I think about those, and the other thing I think about is you being a man of color, me being a man of color, to go out and see the first black quarterback win a Super Bowl. How did you feel about that?
Sid, I say this with warm heart and conviction. I myself was a quarterback, and when I was coming out of high school and coming out of college, the black quarterback was not one that they would play. It wasn't a position that we were able to be a part. I mean, I was the first black quarterback at our high school, which at that time had the mascot as Rebels, and we fought to get that changed. And by my junior year, we got it changed to Vikings, and so was able to go off to college. And one of the first questions that I asked was when I was being recruited, will you play a black quarterback? I mean, because there are some people that wanted to move me to wide receiver. And in doing so, I was really reluctant. And one of the things that sold me is I had the grandest opportunity to sit across from a desk of one of the greatest of all time to play the game was our athletics director by the name of Gail Sayers. And so I asked Gail at the time, will I be able to play quarterback? And he said, if they promise that you would play, then that's what we're going to do. And I was able to play quarterback for 4 years. Well, I came in at that time, Doug Williams was, just going out of Grambling, playing at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, that Doug went to the USFL first before he went to Tampa. So he played there, and not even to mention at the same time, Warren Moon, who ended up having to go to Canada to play, who had just come out of Washington State and the University of Washington, and he had to go to Canada to play because they would not play a black quarterback in the NFL. Well, at the time you had James Harris, who was at the Rams. You had Joe Gilliam, who was at the Pittsburgh Steelers. You had Doug Williams at that time Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and of course Warren Moon was still up north. Well, when Warren came down and played for the Houston Gamblers, for the Houston Oilers, then that transcended that and gave Doug another opportunity to go play for the Washington at that time Redskins, and had one of the best performances that any one person could have within a quarter of a Super Bowl, and won the Super Bowl MVP. Well, that opened the doors for a lot of other guys along the way, the Donovan McNabbs, the Michael Vicks of the world. I had the opportunity when we was at Philadelphia that we had Randall Cunningham, who was a phenomenal athlete. Randall was there with us at that time. And of course, Randall left and went to Minnesota and took Minnesota to the NFC Championship game, and then the Baltimore Ravens, but we replaced him with Rodney Peete, who played well for us at that time. And Rodney came out of Southern Cal, was drafted by the Detroit Lions as the number one, played at the Lions for a short stint. Then he went down to Dallas, and he came to us. So the evolution of the black quarterback really came into play. And now, as we sit here today, 16 of the 32 teams, 16 of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now are quarterbacks of color, which is
And you don't even, and isn't it strange that you don't even hardly think about it anymore? When you put it in that perspective, because so many quarterbacks are judged on their merit now and not their skin color. It just seems to have taken a turn, I think, in the National Football League. And the NBA has always been a place of color, but man, you look at that quarterback position in the NFL. I do go back when Joe Gilliam was playing with Pittsburgh, and he was slinging Joe, and he was throwing that ball, man, and the Pittsburgh fans got so mad, and that's how Terry Bradshaw ended up getting that spot.
yeah.
Crazy that man was. And now he would be a forerunner for what they do in the game, throwing it 40, 50 times.
Well, the other thing too, as you look at it, it's not even a matter of the evolution; it's the willingness to accept it. It's all about acceptance. I mean, when you can get out of your comfort zone and care less about what people are going to say, and again, it goes back to not who's right, but what's right. So they've come to the point that now this is the right thing to do. These are the guys that are out there, and this is what we're playing with. And I think part of it has shown that as the black quarterback or the quarterback of color has shown success along the way, where you've had guys of color, go to the Super Bowl. I mean, and win the Super Bowl. Russell Wilson won the Super Bowl as a black quarterback. And then you're sitting there, and just 2 years ago, you had it's 2 years ago, and then last year you had two opposing quarterbacks both been of color, which had never happened. What I would like to see, though, in doing that is, again, we're still behind the times a little bit in the black head coaches in college and in football. There are some guys that are out there that's of the same caliber of a Mike Tomlin that can show that they can win. You got the young man down at the Houston Texans who's changed that culture and got the Texans headed in the right direction. You would like to see that there's more opportunities for that to happen and make things more competitive in that way.
You mentioned Gale Sayers. I say I'm gonna name I'm gonna name some players, and then I'm gonna let you respond to them. Jim Brown,
the greatest.
Barry Sanders,
unbelievable. And he just he can make you miss in a phone booth.
Wow. You see some of the things the way he contorts his body, that was crazy. I mean, guys, I've seen guys just go with air. He's standing in front of them and they're reaching. And how embarrassing is that? You've been to see the play that was made last year in the Super Bowl with the young man from Philly as he jumped over somebody's head. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No.
When you think about Saquon, what he did.
That's iconic. The way he did that and didn't break strides when he did it. That was the funny thing about it. He did it in a tight.
I love what happens. I love what happens on the sideline when I look at plays in basketball and I look at the opposing team or I look at your team and look at the reaction. But they always show the reaction of the Philadelphia bench, and those guys turn around like they had just seen Houdini. That play was just guys just turn around, just shaking their heads, and I remember just going like, wow, what kind of, I mean, sometimes, we say we haven't seen everything. That was one of those things like, damn, I have never seen that before. It was
and,
just
and,
crazy.
and probably won't see it again ever, because you don't just say wow to that. I said no way that he just did what he did, because you got to remember he got contacted first. He got hit and he spun around and he felt those, and he just decided that he would jump. Now he wasn't like he was running and jumped over the guy's head. He actually lifted off the ground. And I'm like, wow, no way, and no way. And I mean, those are just moments like that. But back to Barry Sanders, I think Barry had ball bearings in his ankles, because he could make you miss, and like you said, and you never wanted to be in the film room on the day after the game when everybody's watching and like, woo, look what happened to you. We used to always.
Do they actually do that?
Oh
I'm serious. Do they actually do that in a? I mean, I know the coaches can't do that. I know you guys go back to your locker, and you guys, when you're by yourself, going, damn. Did you? I mean, do you guys do that too?
Well, they ride each other hard, man. Yeah, it is like you look at.
I'm asking you as a coach. Do you ever go back to the locker room and think about something some player did? Because that's a sacred area you have in your coaching locker room. But do you ever do the same thing we did as players, going, damn, I can't believe that.
Hey, we sat there and said, we'll look at each other and say, did you just see that? No, we didn't see that. Yeah, it was like, did you just see that? And it's like as you look at, like I said, that's iconic that Saquon did, which I don't think you'll ever see again. We've seen guys run and leap over guys, so we've seen that before. We saw Odell Beckham make the catch, and everybody, oh wow! Now we're seeing people make the catch like Odell Beckham made. But I don't think we will ever. And if I do, I'll jump out of my seat again when I see him jump over a man like that backwards, not forward, backwards.
Were you actually? I mean, I was in a room full of people. I think the Celtics had a room of players, and we were down watching the game. And I just remember the players' reaction. I remember Tatum and Brown and those guys went there, and they saw the play, and they all just turned around, and everybody's mouth was aghast, just like what, like, oh yeah. It was like words weren't even coming out after that play that he did.
That's almost like watching a basketball player jump over a guy's head and dunk the ball. Or you remember the play that Dr. J did when he was up and he came up under and did that. You're like, wow, you see iconic plays.
Look, don't tell me anything about Dr. J, because that was a very humbling experience for me. He had his career high of 45 against me, and I might as well have been a damn maitre d', because I don't think I ever touched him the entire time, because I was so mesmerized that I was guarding the damn doc. It's like, like you said, you were with Monk, you were like when they asked him for his autograph.
Yeah.
I did everything but show the man to his damn table. I was just like so just flabbergasted by who he was. And I remember my coach said, I want you to push Dr. J to his right. And you can't push him to his right. And then what I want you to do, I want you to cut him off. I'm like, well, what, a helicopter? I remember plays during my time, like the great David Thompson. I remember guarding him. He was at NC State in college. And I was the 9, head on the swivel, don't let him get the ball. And I remember somebody said lob, and I could see my peripheral, but I said, that ball is going out of bounds. I said, what I could do, next play, I could tell you what size shoe he wore, because I was looking at the bottom of his feet. I was like, he wore size 13. And when they got it, I was like, damn. So, I mean, I just remember plays when you talk about guys. And I don't think there's nothing worse. Philly used to have a play, an ISO play in the NBA. They don't have it as much now. But they had an ISO play where they would send 4 players essentially to the other side of the court, and they would hand the ball to Dr. J. And it was me and him standing there with the ball. And all of my peripheral, I could see 18,000 people start to stand up, and I was like, oh shit, this is not going to be pretty. And it just, there were moments when I played that I just look and I just laugh, thinking to myself like, damn, I can't believe I was out there with, Julius and Michael Jordan. And I look at the era, and before I let you go, I have to ask you about football, because I don't understand the money as much. I understand the NBA because the guaranteed contracts and you're pretty much not going anyplace. But the NFL, explain to me about this salary cap, how you'll have a player 1 year and he's with you, and then he's a salary cap hit, and then he's gone. How does that happen? Because I used to love players and I see them leave. Just explain to me about that.
Well, the one thing that you look at about the NFL, where the NBA is different, and I think the NBA is trying to get there with the draft lottery and everything, and what they're trying to get with the luxury tax and then that second level that they have. The NFL is the only sports franchise, okay, where that you're punished for doing well. So think about this. You win the Super Bowl, right? You win the Super Bowl, and then you're going to pick last in the draft. So now that happens. Not only that, now teams come and they plumb on your guys because they're going to take your guys away from you. And so when you look at the money and you look at the salary cap, is that you can only spend X amount of dollars as a total team. And so now what happens, said, is that if I have a guy that say he's on the third year of his contract, and let's just go the fourth year of his contract, the fourth year of a fifth-year contract, I have the option to pick that up on the fifth year, whatever, however that is, how that works. But if I go in the draft and I can find somebody that's comparable to that I can get for a lesser salary, then now you say, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and dump this and let's, start over in that realm. That's why a lot of the teams that can get rookie quarterbacks that come in and they do well in their first 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? If they're doing well, that money, because they're only slotted for what? Let's take for lack of a better term, not saying that I know the number. Let's say that they count as $10 million against the salary cap. Well, now I can go spend a whole lot more money to get guys and put around them. But the moment that they get to that point that I got to pay them that $40 million contract, now that money is not the same, because now I got to filter it somewhere else. So it's just the to play on the numbers and see how that goes. And
so let me ask you this then, since you said that, is Patrick Mahomes in trouble?
I would say no, because Brett Veach is one of the best at whoever their capologist is, and Brett Veach and those guys, they do it because they do a good job in the draft. They do a good job getting some of the younger players to play well for them. When you go back and you look at defensively, they hit on 2 or 3 of those defensive players that is playing good for them right now, Kalfowski and all those guys. So they were able to supplement it that way. They don't have a high dollar wide receiver that they're paying right now. And then of course Patrick signed his contract, and that was the neat thing about New England, where people do not appreciate Tom Brady as much as they should. Of course, they appreciate him for the wins, but they don't appreciate the fact that he would take less money in order to get more people around him. So, he would defer his money to a point to where, he knew that there was more value in winning championships than it was to get paid right away. And so that was the thing. And see, now what's happened in NFL, which it was once upon a time the only sport that did not have guaranteed contracts. Now the guys are getting guaranteed money.